weekly global podcast on sustainable cooling and heating technologies, brought to you by Shecco and supported by Teco. My name's Andrew Williams, and I'll be hosting today's show from Brussels, Belgium. I'm the European editor of Shecco's industry-leading websites R744.com, hydrocarbons21.com and ammonia21.com. I'm also the editor of Accelerate Europe and Accelerate Australia and New Zealand magazines. I'm joined today by my colleague in Europe, Charlotte McLaughlin. This week we'll discuss the Atmosphere France Conference on Natural Refrigerants, which was held in Paris on Thursday, 5th of July, an EIA report on the continued production of CFCs in China, and a warning that R1234yf could cause harm to drinking water. Starting with the EIA report, published on 9th of July, this found that 18 factories in China are continuing to produce CFCs. Charlotte, what's the story there?
Okay, thanks, Andrew. This report is coming out after these May 2018 findings by scientists, Monska et al., who published a report in the scientific journal Nature that showed that HFCs in East Asia have been increasing since 2012. From 25 to 13%. Like, they give sort of like an estimate of how much they're increasing every year. And this is a particular CFC called CFC 11, which was very much widespreadly used in the foam industry before the phase out under the Montreal Protocol. So what's really concerning about this is that since 2010, under the Montreal Protocol, all over the world, CFC 11 is banned, basically. So if somebody's using it after 2010, then it's very against the agreements under the Montreal Protocol and has widespread impacts on the ozone layer, which is only just beginning to heal as well. So it's kind of a serious situation. So the Environmental Investigation Agency looked into the situation along with others, including the New York Times did a report on it as well, where they also spoke to traders of blowing agents in China. So what the EIA found was that after speaking to 21 companies in China, that CFC 11 is being produced pretty much widespread across the foam industry, they say. So out of the 21 companies they spoke to, 18 of them are actually using CFC 11. And their reasons...
And so what specifically is CFC 11 used for?
So CFC 11, as I was saying, is generally used as a blowing agent to manufacture foams. So it's kind of like an add-on that they use with like another substance to create foams that are used like in the backs of fridge to insulate buildings. And China has a big industry in manufacturing foam, so it's very concerning that they would continue to use this CFC.
And so the findings published in May 2018 in the Nature magazine until now had been a bit of a mystery as to why CFC 11 emissions could be increasing, right? This second report shed some light on that. We can assume that it's attributed to these Chinese companies.
Yeah, so that's basically what the EIA has evidence of. The New York Times also has further evidence. They link to a lot of court documents and seizures across China as well. So it does seem to be something that the Chinese are doing, and the report also gives names. They also did a video showing them interviewing these Chinese companies, so it seems pretty certain that this information is correct, and there has been a lot of illegal production going on. Some of the reasons for this is that it's cheaper. So in the report, they detail it in comparison to HCFC 141b, which is still allowed in China, and is being used sort of as an alternative. And it costs about $150 more than CFC 11. So basically, people are using it because it's cheaper, and unfortunately they're getting away with it, apart from some seizures by the Chinese government.
And so what has been the response? What's the EIA saying in the wake of publishing its report? What's it recommending that needs to be done about this?
So the EI is recommending that there should be more enforcement by the Montreal Protocol and by the Chinese government, and they're sort of claiming that there hasn't been enough enforcement done. We also expect that this will come up this week, as the open-ended working group of the Montreal Protocol is meeting in Vienna in Austria. So I guess more will be found out during this meeting on what the parties to the Montreal Protocol will do, what they will recommend to China to do, and if there'll be any sort of repercussions because of this ozone depleting substance.
And how has the Chinese government reacted to the publication of the report?
So far they haven't reacted, but many suspect that they will say something during OEWG this week, as obviously they're a party, so they'll say something during these meetings. So people expect that they may make an announcement, or because this report has just come out, they may make an announcement this week. I'm sure it's something they're already looking into.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. Moving on to another damning report that was published recently. The Federal Environment Agency in Germany has been warning that R1234yf could cause harm to drinking water. This was a report from the Federal Environment Agency arguing that the degradation of this HFO into trifluoroacetic acid, TFA, could taint Germany's water supply. Charlotte, tell us more.
So the German Federal Environment Agency, the UBA, they spoke in an interview with the Frankfurter Rundschau, a German newspaper based in Frankfurt, about R1234yf. And they were very critical about it, and very concerned, because at the moment R1234yf is being used as a replacement in car air conditioning systems, and Germany has like a lot of the manufacturing in Europe for cars. So their concern is that this degradation of this HFO into TFAs will contaminate drinking water. They say so far this has not happened, because the rates of TFAs in Germany's drinking water is still very low, but the more and more it's used, the more degradation will happen, and then the more it will end up basically in people's drinking water. And this sort of leads off to earlier this year, another report by the Norwegian Environment Agency also brought up some concerns about TFAs and their risk to human health, and if people start replacing HFCs with HFOs, what will happen and what will that risk be to human health? And they sort of recommended that we need to start phasing out HFOs and consequently TFAs before we ever start using them in the first place in such a wide scale.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. So some strong words from the Federal Environment Agency in this interview with the Frankfurter Rundschau. It'll be interesting to see what recommendations they make, if any, to the government for action on this. Moving on now to the Atmosphere France Conference on Natural Refrigerants, organised by Shecco in Paris on Thursday, 5th of July. This was held at the Intercontinental Paris Marceau Hotel and is the first Atmosphere Conference on natural refrigerants to take place in France and the first to take place in the French language. We had a couple of leading end users on the panel, Carrefour and Deleuze, who gave the audience an update on the state of play of their natural refrigerant strategies. Both of these supermarket giants are adopting natural refrigerants as replacements for HFCs, and they were there at the conference to make the business case. David Schalenburg, the Director of Department for Building Projects, Format and Maintenance at Deleuze Belgium, told the event that transitioning to natural refrigerants simply makes sense, and by 2030 will be HFC free. A bit of context as to why supermarkets are adopting natural refrigerants. Commercial refrigeration is one of the areas being regulated by the EU's F-gas regulation, and in 2022 bans on using certain HFCs with GWPs above 150 in new centralised and plug-in commercial refrigeration equipment will come into effect. So Deleuze are already ahead of the game in terms of adopting natural refrigerants as replacements in new and refurbished stores.
So they're really like a company that doesn't want to wait till the last minute to adopt natural refrigerants. They want to be there like first, so that they have tested the equipment, and they've kind of decided what they want to go for, basically.
Exactly. Today, the Deleuze Belgium is part of the Ahold Deleuze group, which is a group gathering 21 local brands, encompassing 6,500 stores around the world. Today, 13% of Ahold Deleuze sites already use natural refrigerant-based installations. That's figures from the end of 2017. In Europe, the figure for the Ahold Deleuze group is 33%. So this is a journey that the wider group and Deleuze Belgium also has already begun to make. For bigger stores, Deleuze Belgium's opting for CO2 by default, and for smaller stores, is using hydrocarbons. So basically choosing which natural refrigerant to go for according to the size of the store, the local conditions, etc., whichever makes most business sense on a store-by-store basis.
Okay, so so I would say it's something that like other people in the room, like especially based in France, probably learned more about how other supermarkets are going towards natural refrigerants.
Yes, there were representatives of other retailers active in France in the room, such as Monoprix, Lidl, etc. They were there to listen and hear what these giant end users are doing with natural refrigerants. Carrefour being the other one on the panel. Similarly, Carrefour is phasing out HFCs and replacing them with CO2 for commercial refrigeration, and also in smaller stores it's investing in hydrocarbons, just like Deleuze Belgium. Factors ultimately influencing the decision to go for CO2 or hydrocarbons include store size, equipment cost, and legislation in each country. That's according to Jean-Michel Fleury, the project director for international support in the Carrefour Group, who spoke at the conference.
So they're really making a decision on a case-by-case basis, basically.
Yeah, it's a group-wide engagement. The conversion of the Carrefour Group stores to natural refrigerants began in 2011, and in Europe and Latin America, at the end of January 2018, the Carrefour Group had 400 sites running on natural refrigerants already.
Okay, so it sounds like something really interesting to learn more about. And I know this was also the first conference we've had exclusively in French, so I guess that really helped overcome any like language barriers that people have.
Yeah, I think there was an awareness that not just the language barrier, but that is significant. In the feedback that we had at the conference, people were pleased that we had decided to hold this atmosphere conference in French, because you reach a wider audience, especially among the key HVAC and R players who are perhaps less used than in other countries to working in different languages. There was a satisfaction that we were discussing these issues in French. But it's not just a language thing, it's awareness of natural refrigerants in general. There was basically the suggestions that perhaps among the frigoristes and the technicians and the bureaux d'études and the different players involved in working in the French HVAC and R market and providing and proposing solutions to end users, perhaps the awareness of these natural refrigerant solutions in France remains a bit lower. that people were saying in the breaks. And so that it's this conference was a good opportunity to start talking to the people on the ground who really matter about what the role that natural refrigerants can play in replacing HFCs.
Well, it's good to learn more about the French market, Andrew. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlotte. That brings this week's podcast to a close. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week for another great NatRefs show.